Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Underneath the Iceberg. I'm your host, Sean Denon. Join me as we dive deep into the untold stories of success. Through candid interviews, we're going to reveal pivotal moments and defining experiences that propelled these ordinary individuals to their level of greatness. Let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Underneath the Iceberg. I'm super excited about our guest today. A guest today is a colleague, someone I consider a friend. I've known Stephanie for many years. Stephanie Latner is our guest today, and Stephanie, I've had a relationship with for since I moved to Florida, right? So Stephanie helped me purchase my first home when I made the leap from Florida, and was, I remember you just setting the tone for who you were as a person, because it was one of those like crazy moments where I called you and I'm like, Stephanie, I'm getting in the car and I'm driving down with the family, and it was like Memorial Day or something like that. And you're like, you know what? We'll make this work. I'm going to get some houses for you guys to see. Ended up showing us the perfect house. We, ended up buying and everything like that. So welcome, Stephanie. It's awesome to have you
here. Thank you.
So Stephanie, tell us real quick before we kind of dive into the to the underneath the iceberg aspect. Tell us just a little bit about what you're doing right now. What you do, and share with the community.
Yeah. So I have two companies, totally unrelated, and that's on purpose. One is the real estate company, as you mentioned. That's a hustle that is a hustle. I mean, there's a lot to a real estate business that. I think unless you're in it, you don't really appreciate all the things that go on behind the scenes. But there's that business, and that actually funds a different company. It is a health and wellness company we have technologies that help people with ADHD, autism, and a variety of other neurological conditions.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you said, you help, the real estate helps fund that other. So is that more your passion project, I would assume?
Yeah, exactly. So that's been a long-term project, because there's a lot to bring something to market in that field. And so, so I started the real estate company, which I was also super interested in, but there was a lot of advantages to that because there was no competing environment. So you can't really, it's very difficult to start a startup if you're working in the same industry, because companies will have rights over the intellectual property, rights over your time. And so there were a lot of constraints there. And I did have an interest in real estate as well. So that really served a great purpose for me, because I could do that totally separately. There was no conflict of interest, and one actually serves the other.
Yeah. And still something that you're still passionate about, right? So it's
something
you enjoy and everything. That's awesome. All right. Well, as with all of our formats, we're gonna start from the beginning, Stephanie. So take us back in time and start from the beginning. Tell us about how you grew up, some of your goals, aspirations, dreams.
Yep. Yeah. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. I spent most of my life there, most of my childhood, and through my first 2 degrees in Pittsburgh. If you know the area, it's a very hardworking, down to earth kind of part of the country. I'm kind of a typical kid, product of the environment there, where it means a lot to people to work very hard, and I will credit my parents in that there was never a time where we didn't know that part of our job in growing up as a kid was to absorb as much as possible from everything, every learning opportunity, that we could, so that we could figure out, what path was right for us, and make sure that we could take care of ourselves, no matter, what the economy was, no matter whether we were married or not married, had kids or not kids. That was just the culture of our family. So that's kind of how I grew up. I did have a brother that had some disabilities. So that really shaped my career choice, which was to go into electrical and bioengineering. And so my goal in doing that was, I didn't think I had the right temperament to be a doctor. That really takes certain skills that probably aren't my forte, but I did love the science and the engineering and learning the anatomy and physiology of the brain. And so that's really where I focus. So that shaped my college career.
Amazing. That's fascinating. So where'd you go to college?
Say again?
Where'd you go to college?
So my engineering degrees, I went to the University of Pittsburgh,
Okay.
and then along the way, I had the opportunity to go back to school for an MBA at the University of Michigan.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So Pittsburgh all the way up through college, and then did you go
Yep.
move to Michigan? Did you live in Michigan for a while?
Nope, but no, I worked in Pittsburgh for many years. So I first worked, actually, my very first job out of school was here in Florida. So I worked for a Navy contractor, defense contractor. Got to do some really super cool things over in the Panama City Beach area,
Okay.
and then but went back to Pittsburgh and I worked for UPMC, that's Pitts Medical Center, in their
Yep.
Department of Radiology, and worked in imaging for many years. First doing teleradiology and different deep low level code development related to imaging. And then from there, I was hired by a company called Respironics, which was the leader in sleep medicine. So I kind of grew up through the ranks in that company and ended up heading up new technology for them. So anything that wasn't their traditional products, I got to lead the investigation of, what are we doing next beyond our traditional products. So that was super cool. And from there, got hired to a company called Innovation Works. They are actually one of the largest seed funders in the country. And so we working there, helped to start about 20 to 30 companies a year and then reinvest in them. And from working there, that's where, between Respironics being head of new technology and then Innovation Works, that really sparked me in terms of entrepreneurship and really kind of broadened my horizons into the multitude of things that you could do. It's one of those good and bad situations where, you kind of get a fire lit under you of all the possibilities, but the challenge is, okay, well, with all these possibilities, what direction do you run in?
Yep.
So that's been super cool. That was very formative in my career.
We know, and I think that's a very pivotal moment because it is one of those where you see other people doing it. I know that was something for me, right? And it was like
Yeah.
there was that moment in my career where I was even like doing some coaching, but I'm still working for somebody, right? And I'm just like, okay, like I'm now in a position where I'm coaching people, I'm giving people advice, I'm doing things, but I still haven't done this on my own yet, right? And that's very many years ago for me. So similar
And that's
similar
true.
type thing.
Exactly, and that exactly, I can totally appreciate that moment that you're talking about, because I think that's every entrepreneur faces that at some point of, when do I take the leap? Can I do it? What if I fail? All of those questions, and all of those maybe sticking the toe in the water and then pulling back out until you finally something pushes you to just say, okay, this is it, I'm going.
Got it. So and that was that moment for you, just that combined.
You know what? It was a
Seems like an
combination.
accumulation of a few things that kind of pushed you.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it wasn't like overnight, but it was definitely. I definitely got excited by working alongside with a lot of different CEOs of startups and their management teams. That's just a super fun environment. That's contagious. I got a little more of that going back to school for my MBA, because now I felt like, okay, I really learned a lot in my MBA. Some people think that that's not worth it in terms of a degree. And I will say, then you're probably at the wrong school, because the school I went to was really life changing, and I think gave me the foundation that I needed to feel confident that, okay, this is something I get what I'm doing here. I know it needs to be done. I'm well trained, and I guess maybe set the stage for me to go do my own thing.
Yeah, and I it's funny because I want to dive into that for a second, Stephanie, because I do think that there's mixed feelings and review, about education and is it important? And now it's like everyone's like, hey, just go invent an app and become a billionaire when you're 17. You don't need college and you don't need this, and it's funny. It's much like the purpose of this podcast. It's not everyone's path is the same, right? So, for what someone could gain from that, the next person could look at it, so I applaud you for that, because I think a lot of people do have that sense of like, oh, MBA didn't do anything for my career, right? Well, that was you, and that was your career,
Yeah.
that was your self confidence, and that was your right. It doesn't mean that MBA programs are inherently bad, right? So I think
Yeah, and everyone learns differently. So I will say, we see a lot in real estate's a great example. There are a lot of people that have no degrees and are wildly successful in real estate. But what I'll challenge that argument is that they're absolutely learning. We have every, classes every day. There's programs, there's so many things. So education is very much a part of it. Otherwise, you're not competent at your job, and it's not going to work out for you. So you're either learning, in one environment or another. Just depends on where you learn best, how quickly you learn in certain environments, what you can tolerate. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to how we learn. And I just think, like you said, that's different for everybody.
No, and I love that because, definitely for me, that was my path. I always tell people I started reading and studying once I left college, right? Because it was like, because
Yeah.
honestly, like I did, and I'm an avid reader. And that's what people are like, I'm ADHD, as you well know, and everything. And it's like, and people are like, well, that you must not be a reader. I'm like, oh no, I can read, and I can read a book in 4 hours if I'm interested in the topic,
Yeah.
right? So you give me a
Yeah.
book like Atomic Habits, and I'll be up till 3 in the morning just paging through it, right? Like the most focused individual that you ever see. But then give me a book about, classical music or something that just doesn't interest me, and it's like, sorry, my brain's just not. I just can't apply the attention to it. So, but
Yeah.
that's very true. That's very true, and it is. It's continuous learning. So I think you're aware of this. So we did make a switch with my son Christian, who's my middle child ADHD, and it's been amazing to see how he's flourishing. I mean, he's starting out with a 4.0. He got ahead of his classes because he could start early with the Florida Virtual. Instead of him coming in and like me getting the weekly, like your son's behind in this, and this, he's to me and he's like, Dad, I'm 2 weeks ahead in algebra. Then, because I want to set it up that if I want to take a day off, I'm going to be able to. And I'm like, it's mindset, right? And it's a thing. So we had this moment actually where he went and spoke at a Brevard Chamber of Commerce event that me and him went to. We got invited as the guest speakers because, as you know, he's my partner in Rush Bowls. So he gets in there and speaks in front of a room of 50 professionals, right? For 10 minutes, Stephanie, and just crushed it, just owned the room, right? So I told him, I'm like, well, there's this class in high school. It's called public speaking. I'd like you to know that you just got an A, right? And it's like, so it's been interesting. But the cool thing that I found with him is because he's really excited about the Rush Bowls and this entrepreneurial track, every day I go in, there's a new book missing from my little library. So he's now reading Atomic Habits, and he's reading like these other books that are so we have two learning tracks for him. We have traditional Florida Virtual, which has been amazing, amazing program. And then the Denon School of Hustle, if you will, right? So he's kind of
Yeah.
enrolled in both right now, but he's thriving. So I think the point being is that not everyone has the same path, not everybody, but find how you learn, find how you learn best, and apply that, and you can really thrive.
Yeah, and it really is truly what excites you. I just think that's a fundamental human quality that obviously we will absorb information more readily if it's a topic that we love and care about and can maybe implement or see the effects of. And I think that's just true for everybody. And then, like you said, exaggerated if you're also dealing with ADHD. But I will tell you, Sean, the nicest thing about real estate is the wide variety of people that I get to meet. I mean, I've met my medical director. I've met people that have joined our team in terms of, engineers. I've met marketing folks like yourself. I mean, I've met so many amazing people that I would have never been exposed to had I not, done this separate, kind of separate gig. And with that are parents that have kids that are similar to Christian, and so many have thrived in a different learning environment. And I guess the one thing that it just makes me super happy to hear stories like that. But one thing I like to confirm with everybody is that it has nothing to do with intelligence or ability to learn or things that people attributed to ADHD way back when that just really are factually untrue. So I love hearing those success stories.
Yep, IQ, those type of things have nothing to
Yep.
do with it, right? So
Nothing to do with it. Yep.
that's awesome. All right, so okay, so we've worked at the companies. We realize that we have a taste for entrepreneurship. We want to take that leap. Tell me about that leap. When did we take that leap? What made you decide? Was it real estate right away? Did you try something else first? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So the first thing I did was real estate, and to be honest with you, it was purely cash flow, cash flow related. I needed to make an income. I needed to make it happen. And if you're anything like me, and I think that we do have some overlapping qualities. That's if you need to take care of something, you got to go take care of it. You know what I mean? And that means financially too. And so for me, that was like, okay, I understand it. I know how to operate the contracts. I know how to navigate the business. So for me, it was something that opportunistically I could dive right into, start working quickly, and have that steady income that would give me the freedom. And I say that loosely because you don't get a lot of freedom in real estate, but especially early on. But it gave me the flexibility to start my other company, which was much more intense in terms of product development and clinical trials and all of that. So one really fed the other, but real estate was what I opened up first, kind of gave me that backing that I needed financially. And then once that was off and running, it enabled me to start my other company.
Now, was that in PA? Did you start your real estate career in PA and then move to
No,
Florida?
it was here. That was here in Florida.
You're here in Florida. Okay, so
Yeah.
post MBA, you came back to
Yep.
Florida, and then this is where you started the real estate career. So
Yeah.
tell me about that in the beginning. I know you said in the beginning especially it's not like cold calls, hustling, like just trying to get
Yeah.
that first couple customers.
So it's hard. It is hard, and anyone that's made the leap knows. So thankfully, I had some people telling me, "Look, save up as much money as you can before you start, because a person that you might meet today, even if they select a house, or you're helping them sell their house, it's going to be a good." Even in the fastest environment, it's going to be a good 60 to 90 days before you even get one little paycheck.
Before you get
And so,
income from the sale, right? So,
yeah. So you just have to plan for that, and then add to it. I like to think I like to think that there's a silver lining here, but I'll tell you, I started when the market had crashed here in Florida. It was a few years before you got here, and it was just horrible in terms of home values, which means the money that you're making is horrible. You have to sell 10 times as much stuff for a tiny, tiny salary. So that first year was really rough, but it makes or breaks you. You're either going to figure it out or you're not. And so, for me, that's kind of an environment I thrive in. So it was like, okay, first year, I had a broker that gave me some great advice, and he said, look, you just really have to learn the ropes at the highest level. And once you have a really good competency, then the pace and the customers and all of that will follow. And that was just great. That was just great advice.
awesome. And so in your real estate career, though, even as long as I've known you, I've seen that evolve too, right? So you kind of went from working in a brokerage to tell me about that progression.
Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of a normal course for a lot of people that stick with it. So, yeah, I originally was at a brokerage where I was part of a team and doing, what I was describing, just learning the ropes. I had great mentors at the time, really some really good people around me. And then, it like all people, you just want to evolve to the next level, the next level, the next level. And so, in real estate, there are certain you can always have your own company underneath the umbrella of a brokerage. And so now I'm with a brokerage that is one of the fastest growing in the U.S. It was nominated for some national innovation awards. Hopefully they'll go for an IPO in the next few years. And the reason I went there was really because of the business mindset of the CEO. He's started numerous companies. He's just a go-getter. And he instills that culture in everybody, no matter where you are in your career. But for somebody like me, it's super exciting because I can then have my company underneath his umbrella, which works great.
Got it. Perfect. That's awesome. Very cool. And so it's pretty much everything in real estate, right? Because I know for me personally, we've done a couple houses together, and this is everyone who knows me and follows my stuff on the internet knows that we're opening Rush Bowls. Stephanie is the mastermind behind the Rush Bowls. Had to talk me off a ledge at least 74 times. Earned some money on that one for sure, but I think that was really cool because it was impressive to me because even when I reached out, I didn't even know if you did commercial. Remember, I'm like, I know you're awesome in the house space, but commercial, and then just to watch your knowledge in that, equivalent. Like a lot of people don't do that, right? They don't have that crossover with commercial and the residential side. So
Yeah, correct. And there's and thank you for mentioning that, by the way. But I think I like you, like so many of my customers are business owners, entrepreneurs. They're doing something. Or they're investors. If they have one house, they may have several others that are investment properties. And I think they always say your vibe attracts your tribe. And so I think that people just know that with like the many conversations you and I had, when do we pull the trigger? When do we pull out? When do we invest? When don't we? When do we put up with a certain situation and maybe bend a little? And when do we say enough is enough? And so just having those business conversations at a much deeper level that obviously affects people's, like you said, your net worth, your family's income, your legacy that you're prepping for your family. I mean, these are very, very important discussions to have. And I love that. That's kind of what gets me wound up. So I end up having a lot of customers that come to me for that very reason.
Yeah, and I can say, and I will, a shameless plug here, but your knowledge of that, and even just the ideas that we would bounce off, and you're like, hey, when you open, you should think about that. You know what I mean? And just thoughts about the business. Like it had nothing to do with the real estate or what the location was or the public lease or this, that, and the other thing, but it was just general, like, hey, I had this thought about the business. So I very much appreciate that. That's awesome. It just shows that your overall business acumen, right, is it's not just limited to real estate. Um, so let's take that pivot now. I think that's kind of a perfect pivot. So we jumped into real estate, full fledged in, saved up some money. I love that. That's exactly what I did. Like when I sold my previous company, as you know, like I was like, you know what? I can either find ways to put this money into different things, or I can just bankroll everything myself, right? And it's like, so I'm a big burn the ships kind of guy. So I'm like, listen, I'm going to take everything, I'm going to put it into everything, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to be calling Stephanie to sell my house again. But that's not the case, right? But no. So I think that's amazing. So so you started the real estate, you started to have some success in that. At the same time, you started the research. So let's pivot to the research and development company. Let's
Yeah.
talk about
So
that.
there was many years of research where we were kind of behind the scenes testing our theories, testing different ideas, doing feasibility studies. So you're kind of mocking up products, but also doing a lot of it's called preclinical testing. So it's smaller trials, controlled environments to try to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so at every step of the way, the data was just like, oh, that's, I think we're on to something. And you would just get a little bit more excited about the direction you were taking. And so that just took its natural course where every step that we made, we kept getting confirmatory data that said, okay, you've got to take the next step. And all of that, of course, costs money. So, I'd be working my tail off on one end to try to make sure that we could do the next step and get to the next step. And then having worked for a seed fund in the past, for me, it was actually super important not to take somebody's money because, investors, when they invest in your company, that's coming out of their retirement. That's coming out of their family's income. And of course they want to make money off of it. But I think you got to be aware that they're really putting a lot of trust in you and in your company. And so I just wanted to make sure from an integrity standpoint that every single thing we did was really fleshed out as much as possible in terms of technology, intellectual property, clinical efficacy, all of it before we got to the stage where we are now, where now we're ready to take on outside investment.
Gotcha. Very cool. And that's where you're at right now with it. So
Yep.
you've gone through some
Yep.
of the initial clinical stuff, ready to take on
Yep.
outside investment. That's amazing. So do you see like an ultimate pivot for you? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Let's say, is it?
Yeah. So then, I mean, for sure, as my other company takes off, that's where I'm going to be full time. It's just too intense. It's too big of a company to you can't do it halfway.
Sure.
So it's now at this stage where I really do need to put everything into that company. The nice thing is on the real estate side, I have now such a well, what's the word? I got all of my business is past clients and their trusted referrals. So I don't have to do the things that you do early on where you're building up your database and you're doing a ton of marketing and open houses and whatnot to try to introduce yourself to people. Most people know who I am. They either like that or not. They either do deals with me or not because we have a rapport. So it's I will definitely keep my license and I will definitely serve my past clients, but the pivot is starting to happen. Yeah.
Nice. And I think that's smart, and it makes sense because like that, you built that rapport, you built those relationships. That's music to my ears because I'm never buying a property without working with you. So it's music to my ears to know that I can still bug you in those in those respects. Um,
Yep, absolutely.
so that's amazing. So anything you want to share about the company at this point? Anything else about like where you're at, what like the mission, what the goal, like what you want to share?
Yeah. So
Anything you can share. I know it's obviously in like research and everything like that. So
yeah, so we're past the research phase and we're past the clinical trial phase. So so we're in the early manufacturing process now. So we are we've already designed what's called an MVP or minimum viable product, but we're really going through. Okay, if we're going to scale this thing because we did some test marketing and the demand seems to be quite high. So we don't want to launch and then fall right after launching. So we are designing for manufacturing where we can implement the product in higher volumes. So we have both an app that is a brain training app, and does a lot of cool different things, and specifically for attention. And our next phase of that will be focused on memory as well. And then we have a headset that is our therapy device, and that we hope to have launched before the end of the year.
okay. Now, do they work together? Does the app and the therapy device complement
Yeah,
each
so
other?
they're complementary to each other. You don't have to use them together. So you can use them independently. So right now, like for example, we have a few people that this is the part of the data that gets me excited because people that I don't know will call me and say, "Hey, I'm using your app," and they'll tell me their story. And just to share like a quick one with you, one young lady, she's like we were talking about before, super bright, happens to be in a embedded code engineer. So it's very low level software engineer that's very detailed, very difficult work. Absolutely brilliant young lady. She discovered that she has an auditory processing disorder, which is part of ADHD. It's also part of autism. It's a symptom of both of those. And by using our app, she started out just failing miserably for her age group in terms of her ability to respond to auditory cues. But over about 4 to 6 weeks, she got up into like the 85th percentile of her age group, and just by training her brain. So we're talking a
So that's
really
amazing. That's actually really tangible. Like,
tangible,
yep.
yeah, super results. And then our clinical trial with our headset, same kind of thing. People after about 30, just one time using our device for 30 minutes, their scores went off the charts in terms of kind of what you were saying before. You mentioned if something's of no interest to you, it's hard to pay attention. That's actually how we test people, and that's actually the environment that we put them in to see if they're making improvement. That's really the only way to test attention, is to put somebody in a really challenging environment and see if they can hang in there, or see if they, if they start daydreaming, or if they start jumping the gun, or what. So that's what our brain training app does. And then our device, we use it as a therapy device. And the clinical trials, after just 30 minutes, people's scores were like skyrocketing. It was really amazing.
That's amazing. So the device is a headset. Does it like
It
emit
is.
sound? Does it have vibration? Like sound vibration?
Yep. Exactly. Yep. And it's you wear it for about 20 to 30 minutes once in the morning. That's what we recommend. You can wear it if you need it in the afternoon, but it just kind of puts you in a very highly focused state where you can take on challenges like that.
Amazing. I can't wait to get one of these headsets.
I will tell you so it has a long origin, like all inventions. That's this isn't where it started. We didn't just like wake up one day and have this idea. It actually evolved from many years of electrical stimulation and magnetic stimulation, and how do you affect nerves of the brain and sleep and concentration and wake and all of that. So it's a lot of history behind this device. but the one thing that we know is that people love this sensation. So even just for kind of like hanging out or wearing it at the gym or anything like that, people tend to really love it.
Yeah, it almost seems like it create like a meditative state for someone who can't really meditate, right? Like for me,
Absolutely,
it's
yeah,
difficult to quiet the brain to do. But what I found is, so for me, and someone helped me out with this was the use of mantra. So
yeah,
anytime I meditate, if I just try to meditate with just clear brain, like don't think of anything, all I think about is the fact that I'm not supposed to be thinking about anything.
yeah.
This thing in my loop, and I'm just like, blah, blah, and then my brain just, and I'm like, okay, just stop, right? You were better off before you started meditating, because all the competing interest in my brain start trying to come up. But someone told me create a singular focus point. Create a
Yeah.
mantra, which is a singular, and just make that your singular focus. And if you can eliminate all other thoughts but that one singular focus, then you are meditating, right? And you are achieving that state. So that was interesting to me.
You're just hearing that, you're going to love this because it's going to set you up for that perfectly. And in fact, back to the real estate thing, that one of the engineers that is, he's basically a kind of a partner to our company, happens to be a composer, and he writes all of his music from scratch, both analog and digital. And so we worked with him to create certain music that is complementary to our neuromodulation that's going on, because it has to be very precise. And with it, what he came up with a variety of songs, but what he also came up with, for people that may want it, is basically a 30-minute session where you start out, especially if you're just waking up in the morning, where you're just kind of waking up, and you can go through your gratitude, segment, and then start planning your day and do a little meditation, and then start like kind of gearing up for, okay, what do I need to get done? And then it ends with a little bit of like, pumping music where you're like ready to take on the day. And I've used it a bunch of times, and it just, by the time you're done, you're like, okay, I'm ready to tackle anything. It's super cool.
I can't wait to try it. All right, so we got a really solid foundation education. We worked at a bunch of companies. We made the leap into entrepreneurship. We became very successful in real estate. And we are now changing the world with this product and this solution. Amazing. So, as I always end every podcast and every segment, I want to dive into a little bit of the why. Now, you had mentioned before about your brother and about that, and that piece being connected, but bring that full circle for me. Just because, I think one of the things that I always talk about is when people talk about their why, it's like, well, because I want a boat, right? Or because I want, it's for my kids, it's for it's for things, and that's all right. Like, I don't think anybody's wrong. There's no right or wrong answer of your purpose, your mission, your why, and things. But I always find that it goes deeper, right? And there's always that level that's like, okay, this is why, but this is why. Case in point, okay? People look at my kids. My kids are highly, highly trained martial artists. They are very physically strong and and all that kind of stuff. And I will be honest with you, part of that comes from a little overcompensation by dad, because I grew up severely bullied my entire life.
Mm.
I was severely bullied. I, took trauma, like all kinds of things. So I myself learned to compensate for that by learning mixed martial arts skills, by, becoming 6'4" and going to the gym all the time, and everything. And it's like, people look at me and they see the confidence and they see everything. And it's like, really? Like, and it's like, oh no, I was that kid who had to hide in the back of the bus and hide in the bushes after school and did, like, that was my life. That was my, so it's interesting where I actually had a psychologist help talk me through that, where it's like, and it's not bad what you're doing with your kids, but just remember that, like, they haven't had that experience, right? And they haven't had, so certain things where you're like, you have to do this, they're not going to connect to it the same way because that was actually your experience. It was just interesting to me that, to see that, but it was like part of where that came from was like, I never wanted my kids to experience a second of what I experienced, right? And one of those things. So again, all different whys, purposes, and things like that. But let's talk about your why for a second.
So I think we just had a therapy moment here because you're making me get a little teary eyed, because I think I discovered something again similar to you. So I'll tell you that in a second. But truly, it was my brother that inspired me to go in the direction I did in terms of education. I in I will say in real estate, which is absent in the corporate world, there is much more focus on mindset and your why and what drives you and really digging deep. So I never had any exposure to that until I was in real estate. I'm very, very grateful for that because it exposed me to really much broader and deeper way of thinking that was absent. And I had a business coach at one point that would take us through these exercises. And one of the things that he says commonly that and it's a big name that everyone in the industry kind of knows, but he says, look, you can look at any example. If you are just motivated for your vacation, or you're obviously feeding your kids is a big one, but if you're motivated by the immediate, you're going to get a certain amount of success. But if you are motivated, if you really discover what goes way beyond you, it is human nature to do, and particularly for people you love, or for people for a situation that you want to create, something that's just way bigger than your world, your view. You're going to work 10 times harder for it, and the ability for you to be more successful than you thought is now attainable. And so that's always really that notion's always kind of driven me. And for me, so one I want to affect, I want to be a positive change in the terms of brain health. I think I don't like the word, I don't like some of the ways mental health is handled in the medical field. I talk to people every single day that have a wide variety of things going on. They're not broken. They might have to struggle with something. They might have some nuances about them, and they're held back. And they have been bullied as kids, and they will say this. They will tell me this constantly. Their stories are hugely empowering and impactful to me in terms of what they've gone through, what resonates with them. And I'm talking like major CEOs of major companies telling me how they felt growing up because of how they were treated, because they didn't read the same way somebody else read, or they didn't master math the way somebody else mastered math, or they didn't, what have you, whatever their story was. And so for me, that's
those skills just to connect with them. I mean, Christian walks into a room, he instantaneously connects with everybody, right? That's just who he is. Matthew, how many words has Matthew said to you in the 6 years that you've known him, right? Other than hi Stephanie, bye Stephanie, right? But Matthew do something big.
And then you got Chase.
What's that?
And then you got Chase.
And then you got Chase, yeah, who's just
yeah. So, but for me, the more I've been in it now, this has been many years now. So the more I'm in it, that I'm living with our customers, I'm living with their stories, and so it is when I see the ability, and our clinical trials were like jaw dropping to see people come out of this exam environment, like where we put them through really difficult cognitive tests, and they came out, I mean, truly angry and frustrated and pissed off, and just kind of just infuriated because of their performance. And then when they came out after wearing the device, and we put them through sham devices and the real devices, like we tested it very thoroughly. And to see the difference in them, that literally their posture and how they walked and the smile on their face, and when they crushed it, and when they saw for the first time, wait a minute, I can crush it. Like I actually can. I just did. And they would see their data. I mean, it just fuels you to keep going as hard and as fast as you can. The part that's emotional that you said is, I watched my brother be bullied his whole life. And I think now maybe I didn't know it, that's what I'm trying to stop, that bullying that should never happen.
That people just go through that they don't even realize, right? And people don't realize that it's happening and I think the problem is we could do a whole segment on bullying, right? Because we all know that that's the things at home and the trauma and the thing. I mean, I've literally, I love Facebook. I've literally had people like reach out to me on Facebook, and they're like, dude, I follow your content. I love your stuff. I am so sorry, bro. Like it was almost like it was literally like an Adam Sandler, Billy Madison moment where like the guy, like, you know what I mean? And he's like crossing people. Now I didn't have a kill list, so we were good on that. But I've literally had people, and they're like, I was such a shit, dude. But they told me, they were like, dude, like my dad used to beat the shit out of my mom, and just something would happen, and it was like, dude, that's what you were dealing with. It wasn't me, right? But it was that thing, and like they tend to find that because I was different. I didn't have that personality. I wasn't. I was the more the quiet, and just different in school. So that's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm going to leave you with this story. We'll close out with this because we're kind of on that track, and I've talked about this on a previous one, but specifically with Christian and the switch to doing everything. So we're in this meeting, right? Well, I got to take you back to the second day of school last year when we're fighting with the school. Hey, he's going to turn in this assignment, or you're going to be in summer school, and then he's the bad kid, and he's this, and and he's always the bad kid, and all this kind of stuff, right? So, which is frustrating to parents, and I try to be as understanding as I can be because I get him. Like I look at Christian, I'm like, I get you, man. I'm there with you. I understand everything you're feeling and going through, which has been great for him because I've really like shared that with him, related. But even as a parent, it's still frustrating. It's still frustrating to get a call from the dean 4 times a week and do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I'll never forget the moment where, Christian's a very strong individual. Stephanie, he fell down on the living room floor and was crying and like convulsing. And he's like, why do I have a stupid brain? Why do I have a stupid, this is not fair. Why did God give me I don't believe in God. I'm just losing control of himself, right? Because he's like, why can't I be like Matt? Why can't I be like the other kids in school? Why can't I just sit still for 5 minutes and just do what the teacher said? Dad, I can't do it. Like, and he's just so emotional. And God, it was horrible, Stephanie, like 2 hours holding it, right? So flash forward almost a year, exactly. He goes to the local Brevard business meeting. He's invited as the guest speaker. And I told Christian, and I hope you guys are listening to this because you made a huge impact on his life. I told Christian, I said, Christian, Rush Bowl's location, we have a huge opportunity with us, and you know what I'm about to say with the USSA baseball field, right? That stadium, that is 1,000 cars in that parking lot, Monday through Friday. It's not even weekends. That's what I try to explain. People are like, oh, is it packed on weekends? I'm like, no, it's like 6 days a week. They have I don't even know where they find time to play baseball on a Tuesday at 7:30 in the morning, but someone's playing baseball. So anyway, long story short, obviously a perfect, base for rush bowls, right? Like, you're playing baseball all day, you're in the heat, perfect rush bowls. So I said to Christian in the beginning, I said, Christian, as part of community outreach, one of our goals is going to be to get in touch with those people. Now we're going to have to work our way up. You might have to like pop in and see and da. So networking meeting finished. Christian finishes his talk. I'm going around shaking hands. Christian has a line of 12 people waiting to shake his hand, right? And we get through that, and then I get, hey, Dad, can you come here for a minute? There's someone I'd like you to meet. Yeah, sure. So I walk over, older gentleman and a woman next to him, and he goes, Dad, so remember the baseball thing? Like, he owns it. I'm like, oh, and like Stephanie, so casually, right? Like, oh, he's my buddy, right? So literally, the guy looks at me and goes, are you responsible for this? And I was like, I said, I am. I said, hopefully I can claim it this time. And he's like, this is the most impressive young man that I've met, blah, 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 blah. So Christian leaves this networking meeting with the cell phone, with the cell phone saying, hey, if you want to come in here and talk about stuff, I want you here on Saturdays. I want you talking to my people, blah, 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 right? And like, oh, and Stephanie, just amazing connection. Then the COO is sitting next to me, and she leans over during Christian's talk. She's like, I love that kid. She's like, he is amazing. Right? So anyway, we get into the car. Obviously, I understand the magnitude and the 6-figure magnitude of what just happened, right, for Rush Bowls. And Christian's just sitting there, big smile and everything. So I just stopped him for a second. I said, Christian, let me ask you a question. He goes, yeah. And I go, how's that stupid brain working out today? Big smile. And he's like, Dad, you're right. You know what I mean? It was just that moment of, I was like, because Christian, you just did what 98% of the 15-year-olds in this world could not do, right? You got in front of a room, you talked, you know, impressed people to the point that this guy gave you his cell phone number and said, don't bother calling the numbers. If you want to have a meeting with me, call my cell
Yeah.
phone, right?
Yeah. That just gives me chills. And it's that moment when you can be a part of somebody self-discovering that they have the capabilities, it never leaves you. It never leaves you. And that's the kind of stuff that fuels me.
Yep, I joke. I'm like, it was literally the moment where Spider-Man realized he could shoot a web out of his
Yeah.
hands, right? Like it was literally like, holy crap! Like I am capable, and I am. So it was an amazing
I love
moment. Huge kudos to Christian on it. So yeah, well, Stephanie, listen, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I've learned so much about you. I knew that you were involved in that. I didn't know the degree in which that you were and everything, which is absolutely fascinating. I look forward to getting my headset. I want the app, so I will get in touch with you about that. And again, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey and continue to change the world, Stephanie. I can't wait.
that. Thank you. Yeah, right back at you. I feel the same about you, and I love that we get to work together at times, and I hope more of that happens.
Likewise. Same here. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much.
See ya.